Hello all, Alison here. Welcome back to Words and Pictures for a few minutes of fun. With some more stamping today. I should really have called this the Simple Summer Stamping Series, given we had last year the Simple Summer Stencil Series. The last few weeks we've been doing a lot of stamping in various ways with various mediums. We had a look at stamping using aqua markers, so watercolor markers, creating a lovely gentle effect on those butterflies. We've also had a look at stamping with a watercolor look using ink pads and oxide pads. So that was that. I'll obviously link these videos down below if you haven't caught them. And today I'm having a go with the Distress Watercolour Pencils. There are a number of videos already on the channel using these, including a swatching one where I talk quite a lot about their properties and ways to use them in different methods and get different techniques and get different effects with them, particularly if you're having trouble getting them going. There are some tips in that video. So lots and lots of videos to check out in the description below if you're interested. But today we're going to have a stamp using these watercolor pencils, again, to create a watercolor effect in some cases, but not necessarily in all of them. One of the things I would say about this is definitely a process, not a perfect stamping, perfect predictable stamping every time, because one of the joys of this is, again, you never know quite what you're going to get. So I prefer to do this in a series. So that's one butterfly stamp going on there, and as you can see, it's possible to get really textured, detailed results. You can also get a lovely watery watercolor effect, but what you need to do is stamp a number of times in a row to get all those various ways of doing it, all those different effects. Same again with the flowers. You can get a really watery effect. You can get something with a bit more texture and detail, like here, or you can get that lovely softness. But again, it requires multiple stampings in a row to get that variation going, to get that kind of difference. Same again here. And as you can see, I'm using the Tim Holtz Flutter set and the Tim Holtz Wildflowers set. These also have dies with them, so by the end of this, hopefully I'll have lots of cut out flowers to play with on the mat. So it's really very simple, much like the watercolor markers. It's a very, very simple basic technique that then you can experiment with, grow with, play in your favorite colors, keep playing, because it's as you play that things change and things move, and you'll find the ways that you like to have your stamped images looking. You might like the really watery ones, you might like something gentler. So I've got a big sheet of watercolor paper. Again, it's the sort of mid-range, not super cheap, but definitely not expensive watercolor paper. And when I'm working with the Distress Watercolor Pencils and doing, as I'm going to be today, dipping them into water, that's here, I tend to have just a sheet of kitchen roll here that I can lie them down on, because as you can see, as you're using them, pigment is going to keep coming off these. These are solid pigment. This is a paper covering, and underneath is absolute pure colour. That'll just keep coming. You can sharpen them, start again. So I'm going to start with this butterfly here. I'll zoom in a little bit in a minute, but I want you to see the sort of process of toing and froing and dipping and so on and so forth, and then later we'll zoom in to see the colour application. So one of the things I like to do is start with a dip. So that's just allowing that pigment to soften, blend with the water, and then I can start putting it onto the stamp here. So I'm sort of rubbing the side of the nib to get a decent amount of pigment out onto that stamp. I'm going to have a dip with this one. So that was pumice stone. This is shaded lilac. And as you work, as you're doing this, again, it's good to do a whole batch in a go, because once your watercolor pencils are activated, they'll keep playing for a while. So it would be a bit of a waste of effort to just do one image. In any case, it's worth it while you've got the wet pencils on on the mat, as it were, to just kind of keep going. That was peeled paint. This is wilted violet. So I'm just, you can see I'm slightly being precise and I'm slightly not. This is going to be a surprise for everyone, this version, when I stamp it. So this is quite watery already. I hope you can see the water shimmering on the stamp there. So this should give us already quite a nice watery, grungy butterfly there. Good. I'm going to go straight for a secondary stamping. So this is what I mean about stamping in a series. That again has got me something relatively detailed. Now it's time for a water spritz to pick up some of that additional, and you get a lovely watercolory one. Now this is the one that I really enjoy quite often, with some stuff still on there, with some colour still in place, though very watery at this point. I then go back in to introduce a fresh batch of colour, and because the stamp is already wet, the pigment is applying in a slightly different way, and I'm just going to see what I get. So similar colours again, that's the pumice stone, wilted violet, shaded lilac, peeled paint, and I'm going to go straight for that. I'm going to go down a little bit because it's quite a wide butterfly, so he's going to, that's got a bit more oomph to it again, but still a softness, which is what's really interesting to me about a reapplying colour after that first watery stamp. And then it's just a question of how long can you keep it going? So that you really get, what is this now? 6, 7 butterflies for the price of one. I'm going to go sideways because he's going to get cut out in the long run anyway. I could probably get one more out of there, but I think that gives me enough for now. In fact, I might switch now to some flowers. So yeah, just clean out those gaps as you do this. A little spritz and spray will get down into that pigment, get it out of the way, and your stamp is ready to go again the next time with whatever medium you choose. Marker pens, ink pads, archival ink pads, whatever it might be. So he goes back on there. Let's have a look. Which one of these stems would I like to do? I think I might have a go with this one. Or is that the one I already used over here? Yeah, no, we've used that one already. So let's pick a different one. Let's pick you. So on the flowers, same thing applies. So you get a little look at what's what on here. And as I said, I'll zoom in for this one. You've got the idea of the dipping and the putting back on the paper towel just to catch the pigment. Paper towel might also in the end make quite a nice piece of collage paper, you never know. I'm going to move some of these out of the way a little bit and dive in so you get a closer look at the application this time. Starting up again, so I'm going to start with a nice pale colour. It's actually Kitsch Flamingo, which when you stamp with it is a stamp that an ink that is pretty full on, but actually the watercolour pencil is quite a subtle affair. And I'm just trying to hit the flower heads there. So again, this first stamping is not necessarily going to be a perfect or beautiful thing. What have we got here? This is Lumberjack Plaid, and I'm just going to add just a touch of that just at the base of those flower heads, just to create a bit of detail. Let's come in with some peeled paint for these leafy bits. It's a bit hard to tell when the stamp's this way up what's leaf and what's flower, but I'm sort of fine with that. So I get some buds, so that's fine. Is that peeled paint? That is peeled paint. Might just pop on a little bit. There goes the train. In summer you can hear it probably better than in winter because the windows are wide open everywhere. So let's see what we've got with that stamping. Might be beautiful, might be hideous, but I'm gonna be happy whatever I get. I quite like that. It's got a softness and a simplicity to the flower heads, but a kind of firmness to the stem. So one of the things we're going to do later on either when these are dry, but we could also have a go at the ones that I had from before, is I like to go back in later and add a bit more detail by hand, manually adding detail. So here's the one that I generally, as I've been playing like this is the one that I've really enjoyed, is going back in after that first watery stamping and just adding fresh colour in places, in most places, and just letting that be whatever it is. I might go in this time with a bit of Shabby shutters over these leaves. That's going to be a more of an acid sort of green. A little bit of peeled paint just to keep that connection with the stampings we've already made. Make sure we've got some on the leaf. And again, let's see what we get. But you can see, see, and this is what I mean. Somehow the stamping after the watery stamping very often gets me quite interesting detail. Still soft, but yeah, something really nice to play with. And this is why I mentioned at the very beginning, this is why this needs to be a sequence of stamping. It's no good kind of going, oh, I've done one stamping and that one hasn't worked and it's terrible and I don't like it. This is stamp and then stamp and then stamp again and see what you can create as you go. Let's put one more really watery one down there, because as I say, it's always possible to go in with some more detail, whether with a pen or a pencil or one of these watercolor pencils. So that's the technique. It's basically very, very simple to get that sequence of stampings. Vary your amounts of water. If you're not getting an effect you like on the paper, try a different paper. Can't tell you how much difference the paper substrate you use will make. Let's go back in and show you what I mean about adding a bit of detail. I have done it on a couple of these. I went back in and added a little bit of, I think, Crackling Campfire over that one. A little bit of extra Lumberjack Plaid here. So yeah, it's just about looking at the image and kind of going, oh, well, I'd quite like a little bit of additional colour in there. And then again, a water brush will be your friend, but you can, of course, just use a brush with water. And look how that's just given us an extra bit of detail in that flower head. And I'm flicking the colour out to follow the shape of the stamp. And that gives me beautiful additional detail. I might go back in on this one, keep it subtle, put in a little bit extra of this Kitsch Flamingo, just around some of the places where it completely got lost. And then again, with the water brush, just going to use that to soften the application. You don't have to. If you like the detail, keep the detail. If you want that watercolour look, just soften it. So in through this leaf here, I can just spread out that colour a little bit, soften it. Quite often it's the stem that I want to just beef up a little bit, in which case I'll just take the pencil, watercolour pencil, and just sweep down that stem to just give it a bit of extra presence, a little bit extra on the bud in the middle there. Sometimes it's nice to add a little bit of green at the base of the flowers. That gives you a real sense of the flower emerging from the stem. So let's give this one a little bit of extra detailing, or maybe this, this one. So again, I'm adding a bit of colour at the base of the stems where it's joining, and then I'll just take my watercolour brush or a brush dipped in some water and just use that to draw the colour around, keep it mobile, add a little bit of extra detailing in the places that I feel I want it. And that's completely optional, obviously. These are beautiful already in and of themselves, and once they're cut out, they're going to make gorgeous additional elements on tags, on all kinds of places. So that was a lot of pigment went down there, and that does happen with the watercolor pencils. They've got a lot of pigment to offer, and so sometimes you might find yourself splurging, but that just means I can create myself a little leaf. That one I might then have to cut manually, because of course if I cut it with the die, That's going to cut off my beautiful leaf that I just created there. I just wanted a bit of peeled paint in these stems because they've got quite a blue-green look to them. And I wanted a green. So I'm just going to spread out some colour here. Just taking that green down into that stem, up into those flowers. I might put a little bit of green up here, just because it got very watery in this print. So let's go like so, just to revisit that green in various places. So I'm keeping it simple today. I hope you can see that that's a lovely technique to use. Just a way to use these watercolor pencils to create detailed imagery or soft watercolor imagery. And yes, let it be a process. Let yourself be interested in what's emerging. Just looking at these that have dried a little bit now. And I think on this one, I want to just allow this colour to spread out a little bit into some petals. And it allows you to sort of define the shape of the flower. Having that additional pigment, you can do a little bit of shading, a little bit of additional depth. Have a play. This one's vanished quite a lot, those flowers. So again, I can go in and be a little bit inventive. This is the other good thing about stamping in a series, I've got the example right next to me of where that image wants to be. And this is another good way of just training your own mark making, training your own ability to create a flower head. Just use this as a way to practice. That one got lost. So there we are. I've added in flowers to those. Again, when I get to the business of die cutting, I'll need to check if I want to cut by hand to preserve these beautiful flowers that I've just drawn myself. Oh, I really need to sharpen my peeled paint. Look at that. Let's see if we can draw some of that colour down into the stem and up into the stem there. That's fine, because that will also get tidied up when we do the die cutting. I want to spread out some of these pinks that I've added where I've added the flower heads. And I could play like this for hours, as you can see. Just gentle bits of colour moved around. I really like the combination of the Lumberjack Plaid and the Kitsch Flamingo. They're neither of them colours that get to come out very often on my desk, as you might imagine. But in combination, they create a beautiful watercolour flower, I think. Lumberjack Plaid gets to come out for winter berries. It's not true to say it never comes out. So I'm going to do some die cutting. I'm going to cut out some of these shapes so that when you return for the close-up, you'll see some of these cut out and ready to play. But thank you, as always, for your company today. I hope you've enjoyed seeing another way to do some simple summer stamping. I might have to create it as a series. I'll just put them all in a playlist together so that you can find stamping with various mediums very easily if you search on the channel. Do leave any comments or questions down below. If you've enjoyed this, do give me a thumbs up. And if you're not already subscribed, please do consider clicking the subscribe button. I would love to have your company on this creative journey. Thanks so much for watching, and happy crafting all. No, I'm not a close-up. I'm back. One other thing that it is really lovely to do is to add, as well as detail with the watercolor pencils. Obviously, you could bring your aqua markers back into the game, but also a little bit of white highlighting can be really nice. So if you can get a white gel pen to work for you, that's grand. I these days tend to go more for this Dr. P.H. Martin's bleed proof white and use my dip pen, whether that's painting it on or dipping it in. You need the Dr. Martin's that I've got is a little bit thick. I don't know if it always is. This is my first bottle of the stuff. So I find I need to wet my dip pen in order to use it. But then it's just a lovely way to add a little bit of very fine, says she, when you can get it to cooperate. If anybody knows of a fail-safe, foolproof, fail-safe white gel pen. I've tried them all. I've tried the Posca paint pens. I've tried the Arteza. I've been through, I don't know how many. What's this one? Yeah, Signo ball pens. They work for a little while and then they just stop. And it might be because I'm being too mixed media with them. It might be that I'm expecting them to work on surfaces they don't want to work on. But you can see now that I've got a bit of liquid detail in there. That's working really beautifully to be able to add in where that wateriness has maybe created a little bit too much softness in the patterning. You can get it back with a little bit of white highlighting. I quite like a little bit of white highlighting sometimes down the side of the body. That's what I was doing there, down the side of this body, so that it just gives you a chance to add back in a little bit of sunshine, a little bit of white highlighting to just create the illusion of transparency, translucency, the butterfly's wings just catching the sunlight. So that was just a little extra thought. I thought it was only fair to pop into your heads before I leave you to enjoy your weekend. Happy crafting all.